While the world is fixated on the war in Gaza and before that on the war in Ukraine, Sudan, the third largest country in Africa, is coming apart.
At the border in Adre, we're seeing a large influx of refugees from Sudan. In October, where we were seeing about 100 people per day, in the last 4 days, it's been between 1,000 to above 3,000 in one day.
The humanitarian and security situation is beyond dire. Human rights groups say the war crimes inflicted on civilians are hideous, and more than 6 million people have been displaced from their homes because of the violence, with more than half of them children. So, how did we get here, and why does no one seem to be able to do anything to stop it? Sudan's spiral downwards happened quickly due to two warring generals. Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, who leads the Sudanese Armed Forces, or SAF, and Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, widely known as Hemedti, of the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, had been allies. The pair staged a joint coup in 2021 and ruled Sudan in tandem, and for a period of time even appeared to be on a path towards peace. But in April 2023, their partnership ruptured violently in a dispute over which group would dominate Sudan's military and control the country's wealth of natural riches. And the result? Violence and chaos quickly consumed the entire country.
The health sector is completely broken down. The education sector, similarly, we're seeing 19 million children out of the 23 million children of Sudan are out of school, and potentially so for the next while.
Many Western nations, including Canada, rushed to get their citizens out of Sudan. The capital, Khartoum, has seen some of the worst fighting. The RSF seized parts of the city, but the SAF held on to Port Sudan, the key commercial city on the Red Sea.
If you'd asked me 3 or 4 months ago, I would have said that one of the two sides, the Sudan Armed Forces, was getting the upper hand. I would now say that is reversed.
Widespread war crimes are being committed against civilians, according to the United States and the United Nations. The Rapid Support Forces evolved out of Arab militias in West Darfur. Rights groups say members of the ethnic African Masalit tribe from the region are being brutalized by the RSF, with the use of rape and sexual violence widespread.
While I was working at a shelter for the displaced, the RSF came. They killed some of the staff and injured others. I was with another woman. Both of us were unmarried, and we were raped.
There, have also been very sort of clear indicators that we may also see a sort of a Rwanda scenario. In other words, where you have these genocidal actions taking place at a mass level, at a national level.
The UN Food and Agricultural Organization says millions of families are dealing with unimaginable suffering from severe hunger. An estimated 25 million people require assistance to survive, and given the civil breakdown, it's very difficult to get help into the country. The flood of displaced people is destabilizing Sudan's neighbors. Our CBC crew visited the border with South Sudan in May and saw how South Sudan's ability to deal with hundreds of thousands of people fleeing has stretched its own frail resources beyond what the impoverished country can handle. Efforts to resolve the crisis involving talks brokered by Saudi Arabia have failed.
We have former rebels, current rebels, militias, both of sort of ethnic militias as well as ideological militias, have all joined the fray. And this means that ending this conflict, or at least ending the fighting in any kind of ceasefire, has become infinitely more difficult and will continue to be so the longer this war continues.
So really very little to choose from, which makes it very difficult as a mediator. You really don't want to be backing either of these sides, but there is no choice. There appears to be no third choice.
The world is not really paying attention in the way that it needs to. The United Nations Security Council has not had a resolution on Sudan since the fighting began in April. We have not had the requisite pressure, not just on the generals, diplomatically speaking, but also on their supporters in the region to ensure that they at least come to a negotiating table with any kind of sincerity.
Having a largely lawless, unstable giant of a country disintegrating has vast security and humanitarian implications. Sudan's implosion carries grave risks for all of Africa and beyond.